Welcome to the second part of my Metal Gear Solid 5 breakdown. The first part I basically covered the review of the game, what I thought of it for a new player if they're considering purchasing it. This part is more detailed about actually what I feel and think about the game. I will cover many aspects about the game's problems, what I think about what's happened to it. This is going to have a couple of spoilers in, so if you haven't played the game, I don't recommend that you watch this video. If you have played the game, then feel free to watch to see what I actually think about the game. For me, it's best to start with my history with the Metal Gear Solid series. I got into Metal Gear Solid from the first game on the PlayStation. I liked the idea of stealth meeting action, and the fact that it also brought in the sort of ideas and level of cinematics that you actually find in Hollywood action films at the time really did appeal to me. I must have completed, I've actually lost count of how many times I've completed that game over the years, and I've also completed it when it was re-released on the GameCube with better graphics. From there, I pretty much followed every single Metal Gear Solid release. In most instances, it would actually make me buy a new games console just so I could actually play the new Metal Gear Solid game. I would always play the games upon release, and I'd normally complete them within a week of them being out. I found the replayability in the game's great. There's a lot of humour, there's a lot of things that go into it. At the moment, I currently have a frame on the wall where I've got a lot of my Metal Gear Solid cases actually framed up and on display. I've got a little Solid Snake action figure, which I'm not too proud to say on a YouTube channel, and a huge poster of Big Boss on my wall. And this is kind of how influential he has been in the sort of games that I like to play now. So with my background covered, basically I now need to look at what I actually think happened and what I actually think on Metal Gear Solid 5. For me, one of the first big problems that really sticks in my head is actually the hype. In 2012, there was a release of information in regards to a new studio called Moby Dick Studios, and they basically did a video whereby it had high-level graphics. There was a sort of character in it where you could see similarities to a character from the Metal Gear Solid series. As it turned out, this was basically a huge publicity stunt by Hideo Kojima. This was to try and confuse and surprise the audience when actual news came out in regards to Metal Gear Solid 5. Once he admitted that Moby Dick Studios was actually an entire ruse, it's then that we actually started getting information about the game Metal Gear Solid 5 and how it's going to be released. Very early on, we was informed that it would be Metal Gear Solid 5 would end up being two games. A prologue of Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes, followed by Metal Gear Solid 5 Phantom Pain. One of the big things that we ended also finding out in these early days is that there was going to be a recasting of the voice of Big Boss. The person that they had chosen for this was Kiefer Sutherland. Now looking back, having played both Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain, I must say that Kiefer Sutherland was a good choice. He does a good job purveying the character of Big Boss, but one of the reasons that was cited for the change in the voice actor was that Hideo Kojima wanted facial expression. He wanted emotion to be pervaded through the face of the character, and he thought that using an actual actor would be able to get a better performance. I do agree with this, and there are moments in the games when this really does work well. But a lot of the times, because of the cinematic style that Hideo Kojima actually applies to his games, you actually don't get the shots of the face and the reactions that you want. So to me, it's sort of a wasted opportunity. A lot of the great moments when you're actually expecting to see reaction from Big Boss, the camera's not on him, it's off to the side, or it's panning around him, or you're looking from behind him. It's just such a shame. Moving on to the release of Ground Zeroes. This game was very mixed when it got released. We was looking forward to the prologue to Metal Gear Solid 5. It was going to give us a taste of the game engine, the mechanics, because apparently the entire game system was being rethought out with a mind to open world design. But what a lot of people ended up viewing it as was very high price for what it was. It ended up feeling to a lot of people that it was a pay for demo idea, whereby the game Metal Gear Solid 5 had been in production for such a long time that there was this overall theory that because the game was going over budget, they was having to get a bit of it out to the public to get some revenue back to try and finish Metal Gear Solid 5. We have no idea if any of this is true, but it does make you wonder, and given how Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain was released, it again makes you wonder if there is anything true to that. The other thing that sort of bugged me about Ground Zeroes is if you actually pay attention to the game, you can work out the twist in The Phantom Pain from Ground Zeroes. It's actually something that the community noticed. Once Ground Zeroes was released, we then started getting trailers for The Phantom Pain. Each trailer got larger, bigger, more spectacular. The editing on the trailers was fantastic. There was great choice on the music that was played through the video, and it showcases what the new game engine could do, how the cinematics would work. But the problem was the fan base was looking at these videos because of Hideo Kojima's history in the past of misdirection. They was doing frame by frame analysis of each trailer, looking for possible interpretations of what was actually going to be coming in The Phantom Pain. As a fan, I followed these. I watched the analysis, trying to glean as much information as what I could before the game released. So a couple of years pass, and we then get to 2015, and this is when everything happens. We get obviously the release date for Metal Gear Solid 5, but we also get the news about Kojima and Konami. It's worth noting that we will probably never actually know what exactly happened, if it was a falling out, if Kojima actually was already decided to leave Konami and was in the process of developing his own ideas for his own company, which is his own studio, like what we know now. But any way you cut it, it has affected Metal Gear Solid 5. There are so many things about this game that just feels a little bit off. One of the ones that sort of does get to me is this is the only game, and I can also I've been trying to think of books that have done this as well, and I can't think of any books. But Metal Gear Solid 5 has 2 prologues. The entirety of Ground Zeroes is a prologue to the Phantom Pain. And then when you load up the Phantom Pain, you then immediately start a prologue. And if you actually go into the missions list, it's called a prologue. So when you've started the game, you have to, if you start the game from afresh, then you have to go through prologues. And then you have to replay the prologue during the epilogue to find out the twist. Which, to me, kind of, I can see what he was going for, but at the same time it does feel a little bit lazy. Another simple thing that I can actually go into is the bland boss battles. This one's quite easily and obvious if you've played the game. The enemy that you're fighting, you find out a bit of his backstory, but you don't know his real motivations, what's behind him. It's not like the rest of the Metal Gear Solid games, whereby you've got this ensemble of cast of baddies that you have to go through one by one, and you sort of end up learning each one's tragic story. In this, it's sort of one big bad with a load of minions, and a couple of them are super soldiers in a sense. But there's no real character development behind all the other bosses other than Skullface that you fight. Another area that sort of bugs me a little bit is the pacing of the game. If you play through the game for the first time, you go through Metal Gear Ground Zeroes, then you go into the Phantom Pain, go into the prologue, and the beginning of the game is very cinematic, and it reminds you of sort of Metal Gear Solid 3, the Metal Gear Solid 4, that sort of story and visual style and the pacing, but brought into the current generation of graphics. And it works really well, and then it just peters off into the open world side, and you don't really see it again until you play the epilogue, which is basically the exact same mission. And when you're playing the game, you're like, okay, so I've just started chapter 1, here we go. And you play through mission after mission after mission, and you get up there and you're up into the 30s, mission number 30 or so, and you get sort of like, it works like almost like a TV series, where the last 3 missions have like a to be continued at the end of the mission. And once you do the 3rd mission, you get this trailer for coming in chapter 2. And you think, oh my god, I'm 31 missions in, and this thing's sort of promoting at me a chapter 2. Wow, this thing's got to have like 60 missions, and considering the other games sort of normally followed a 3-act structure, there's going to be a lot of missions. I haven't even scratched the surface of what this game is. But it doesn't actually end up working like that. Chapter 2 actually is rounded up very quickly. It feels rushed. It feels like that there was definitely a lot of ideas that wanted to be explored, but they just either didn't have the funding, the time, or the resources to be able to put the energy into finishing off chapter 2. The only way that I now look at the game is when I go through the mission index, you have missions that in brackets say flashbacks or replays. To me, if you actually look at the pacing of where those missions come in and think of them, right, so the first mission is the prologue, which is a flashback, and then the 3rd mission is a flashback. So the 2nd one is sort of the end of the prologue. From there, mission 4 is chapter 1, at which point you then go down to about mission 11 and you get another flashback. And to me, if you use that principle of the flashbacks or replays being the bookend to chapters, then this is actually a game with a prologue, 3 chapters and an epilogue. And if you look at it like that, I'm actually comfortable with that, and that's actually how I look at the game now. I don't follow the pacing. For me to be happy with it, with the way that the game does it, I've had to put my own pacing to the game for me to actually feel that it actually follows a coherent narrative structure. The last thing that got me is this game was built to be sort of the fall of Big Boss, him becoming the big bad that we come to expect in Metal Gear 1. Because the open world structure of the game, it very much puts the player in control of how you approach the game, how you play it, which kind of goes against that idea. I myself ended up playing non-lethally, so I didn't really kill anyone. I would always try and go the silent route. So because of the nature of the way that I play the game, I didn't look into developing the nukes because it kind of goes against the way that I play the game. To me, my character never really became the evil big boss. So there feels like that on that level there's a disconnect between what I'm playing and what the story behind the game is telling me what's happened. Now obviously with the twist it gives tells us that basically we are not actually Big Boss, we're the medic who is also in the helicopter at the end of Ground Zeroes. But again, there is that disconnect because the way the game ends, it explains that our character becomes also Big Boss through the deeds that we do. And we kind of know Big Boss in Metal Gear as becoming this baddie, but I never do any action. So is it another situation like in Metal Gear Solid 2, whereby you control the character and create the choices, and then as soon as the game ends, Raiden has his own control. You no longer have control. He has his own life, in a sense. Is that kind of what is indicated with Metal Gear Solid 5? And I don't know. Which wraps me up to basically my final problem with Metal Gear Solid 5. And it's nothing to do with the game, it's actually to do with me. It's all down to the expectations that I actually went into the game with. Because of the way that Hideo Kojima promotes his games and the way that he likes to play with player expectations, you end up getting to the point where you try and outthink what he's thinking, and you try and come up with scenarios yourself that he could possibly be thinking. As I said during my play of Ground Zeroes, I came to the conclusion that I was not playing Big Boss in the Phantom Pain, and that's where I saw the entire character creation part of the game coming in. I actually thought we was going to be playing not the medic on the helicopter, but someone like Decoy Octopus, because to me, I thought that this game was actually going to be about the foundation, building the foundation of the Sons of Big Boss. So we would get to see the formation of that team. So you'd get to meet Decoy Octopus, Sniper Wolf, Raven, Ocelot. In the promotion of the game you see a female sniper, and there's another companion you can have is a wolf. So you kind of have, in your own mind, you're thinking, okay, perhaps we've got the origin of Sniper Wolf there. You've got Ocelot. So it was all really teasing that idea, and to me the fact that it didn't pull through sort of ruined that idea of the game for me. Well, another thing that I was thinking was, when the news broke that you would be creating your own character, is the fact that there would be this thing where you was that character and you get changed into Big Boss. But at the same time, Big Boss would then assume your identity, which I kind of ended up being half right about. But the thing that I thought was going to happen was we would then be put in a situation where we would end up having to fight Big Boss in the player avatar that we actually created. And it would be that then builds the entire Big Boss thing. Perhaps we would end up doing something that gets the wrath of the real Big Boss, or we're on the hunt for the real Big Boss. So after so much hype, and when players' expectations are really high, we get the sort of problem that we now have with Metal Gear Solid 5. Gameplay wise, it's one of the best Metal Gear Solids out there. That I cannot really argue with. But when you do a comparison to the story and the character building of the other games, this is where Metal Gear Solid 5 really does fall short. After completing Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain, I spent a lot of time in the forums, on Reddit, trying to find the secret that would sort of unlock the meaning of the game to me, the thing that Kojima put in there that only dedicated fans be able to work out, so you then got to understand how the entire story came together. But for me, I called off that search a couple of months ago because I don't think that there is one. To me, the only way that I'm happy with the narrative in this game is to look at it in the simple fact of we were playing a character that has a giant piece of shrapnel in his head, which anywhere you cut it has got to cause some sort of brain damage, and we get to play his recollection of the events of the Phantom Pain. But because of the damage that's been done to his brain, there are actual gaps in his memory and he's actually remembering things wrong, which for me is a shame for a series like this to end on, where one of the strong points of the Metal Gear series has been its storytelling and its character development. To me, in an ironic sense, the Phantom Pain lives up to its name. I have a phantom pain over what is missing from the game, even though I don't know what it is. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. I think I'm done with Metal Gear Solid videos for now. I may revisit this topic or other games in the series in the future, but the next video is going to be something else, and something that requires a lot less thought. Thank you, and have a good one.